I used to work the night shift at a hotel situated just outside the bustling city where I reside. It was a peculiar experience being surrounded by the tranquil countryside, far removed from the urban chaos. The lobby, draped in the soft glow of dim lights, became my domain during those late hours. In the hush of the night, I found myself alone in the hotel lobby, a solitary figure amidst the stillness. The dim light cast long shadows across the floor as I meticulously wiped down the front desk, the soft hum of the air conditioner the only sound to break the silence. It was my routine, my responsibility to ensure that everything was in perfect order for the early morning guests. As I went about my tasks, I couldn't shake the feeling of isolation that seemed to permeate the empty space. The quietude was palpable, almost suffocating, and yet there was a strange sense of tranquility that settled over me as I worked. Then, like clockwork, the tranquility was shattered by the jingle of the doorbell. Startled, I glanced up to see a figure standing in the doorway, their features obscured by the shadows. With a quick glance around the lobby, I straightened my uniform and approached the front desk, my heart quickening its pace. "Can I help you?" I asked, trying to sound composed despite the unease creeping over me. The stranger's gaze bore into mine, his eyes inscrutable in the dim light. "I need a room," he replied, his voice low and monotone. My fingers tightened around the edge of the desk as I forced myself to remain calm. "ID, please," I requested, my voice steady but my heart pounding in my chest. The stranger hesitated for a moment before reaching into his pocket and producing a worn-out driver's license. I scrutinized the document carefully before reluctantly handing it back, hotel policy echoing in my mind. "I'm sorry, but we require a valid form of identification," I explained, my voice trembling slightly. The stranger's demeanor shifted, his expression darkening with frustration. "I'm alone," he snapped, his voice dripping with impatience. The tension hung heavy in the air as I stood my ground, refusing to make exceptions. With a frustrated huff, the stranger stormed out of the lobby, leaving me alone once more. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. The hours dragged on, each minute feeling like an eternity as I counted down the moments until the end of my shift. When 6 a.m. finally rolled around, I wasted no time in gathering my belongings and making my way to the parking lot. As I approached my car, a sense of unease settled over me. The air felt heavy with tension, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I quickened my pace, my heart pounding in my chest as I fumbled for my keys. That's when I heard it, the soft rustle of footsteps from behind the bushes. My blood turned to ice as I spun around, my eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of movement. And then I saw him. The same stranger from earlier, his features illuminated by the soft glow of the streetlights. Panic surged through me as I fumbled to unlock my car door, my hands shaking uncontrollably. But before I could even react, he was upon me, his presence looming over me like a dark cloud. With a scream, I dove into the safety of my car, slamming the door shut behind me. But it was no use. With a sickening crunch, the stranger smashed through the window, his laughter echoing through the night. Terror consumed me as I fumbled for my phone, my fingers trembling as I dialed for help. But before I could even speak, a figure emerged from the darkness, a guardian angel in my hour of need. It was a fellow guest, drawn outside by the commotion, his voice sharp and commanding as he confronted the assailant. "Leave her alone," he shouted, his bravery a beacon in the darkness. Caught off guard, the stranger hesitated for a moment before fleeing into the night, leaving behind nothing but shattered glass and a trail of fear. Shaken to my core, I sank back into my seat, the events of the night replaying in my mind like a horror movie. Later, when the police arrived, they revealed that the stranger was a fugitive, wanted for a string of violent crimes. As I drove away from that forsaken place, I knew that I could never go back. The memory of that night would haunt me for the rest of my days, a constant reminder of the dangers that lurk in the shadows of the night shift. It was one of those nights where time dragged its feet, and the supermarket aisles echoed with emptiness. I was the Lone Ranger, tasked with keeping the shelves stocked and the floors cleaned during the graveyard shift. The fluorescent lights buzzed above me, casting long shadows that danced eerily across the linoleum floor. At around 2 o'clock, a customer shuffled in, looking for nothing more than a cold beer to ease the night away. I greeted him with a weary smile, exchanging pleasantries as I rang up his purchase. 5 minutes later, another figure entered the store, his clothes tattered and soiled. He wandered aimlessly through the aisles, his gaze darting nervously from side to side, but he left without buying a thing. As the clock struck 3, I set about my routine tasks, dragging the mop bucket across the floor and restocking the shelves with weary hands. That's when I heard it, the faintest of noises, like the rustling of paper in the breeze. I paused, my heart pounding in my chest, and strained my ears to listen. There it was again, a shuffling sound coming from somewhere in the darkness. My hand tightened around the mop handle as I slowly made my way down the aisle, my footsteps echoing in the empty store. And then I saw it, a shadow lurking between the shelves, its form indistinct in the dim light. At first I hesitated, my mind awash with fear and uncertainty. But then, with a gulp of courage, I forced myself to approach. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice wavering with uncertainty. The shadow didn't answer, only seemed to cower deeper into the darkness. Heart pounding, I flicked on the overhead lights, illuminating the aisle in a harsh glare. And there he was, a man with dirty clothes and wild eyes, huddled amongst the products as if seeking refuge from the world outside. "You need to leave," I said, my voice trembling with a mixture of fear and authority. But the man refused to budge, clutching something tightly in his pocket as if it were his only lifeline. Panic rising in my chest, I backed away slowly, fumbling for my phone to dial 911. Within minutes, the police arrived, their flashing lights cutting through the darkness like a beacon of hope. The owner of the supermarket, a man named Oliver, arrived soon after, his face etched with concern. "What's going on?" he demanded, his voice sharp with worry. I explained the situation as best I could, my words tumbling out in a rush of adrenaline-fueled fear. Together, we watched as the police combed through the aisles, their flashlights casting long shadows on the walls. And then, just as suddenly as he had appeared, the intruder was found. A homeless man, huddled in a corner as if trying to disappear into the very fabric of the building itself. As the police led him away, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that lingered in the air. It was a night I would never forget, a night that would haunt my dreams for years to come. And as I handed in my resignation the next morning, I knew that I would never again venture into the darkness of the night shift, where shadows lurked and nightmares roamed free. It was just another night, like any other, working the night shift at the factory. The routine was familiar, patrols around the perimeter, checking the security cameras, and keeping an eye on the machinery humming away in the darkness. As the night wore on, the silence of the factory was occasionally broken by the distant sound of a passing car or the rustling of leaves in the wind. On Monday evening, as I made my rounds, I heard an unusual noise coming from the direction of the factory gate. It sounded like a faint scraping, like someone trying to pry it open. I approached cautiously, shining my flashlight into the darkness. But there was nothing there, just the empty street beyond the gate. I shrugged it off, chalking it up to the wind or maybe a stray animal. 2 days later, the noises returned, but this time they were unmistakably coming from inside the factory. My heart skipped a beat as I realized I wasn't alone. Gripping my flashlight tightly, I crept towards the source of the sound, my footsteps echoing in the empty halls. As I rounded a corner, I saw a shadowy figure hunched over one of the workbenches, rifling through the papers scattered across it. Panic surged through me as I realized we had an intruder. "Hey, what are you doing here?" I called out, trying to sound braver than I felt. The figure froze, then bolted towards the nearest exit. I gave chase, my footsteps echoing loudly in the empty corridors. But the intruder was fast, disappearing into the maze of machinery and shadows. I searched frantically, my heart pounding in my chest. And then, Just as I was about to give up hope, I spotted him crouched in a dark corner, trying to hide. "Stop right there!" I shouted, aiming my flashlight at him. He froze, his eyes wide with fear. "Please don't call the police," he pleaded, his voice trembling. But I knew I had to. This was bigger than just a simple break-in. This was a threat to the safety of the factory and everyone who worked there. I dialed 911, my hands shaking as I waited for the operator to pick up. Within minutes, the police arrived, their sirens wailing in the night. The intruder put up a fight, struggling against the officers as they handcuffed him and led him away. And in the harsh glare of the police lights, I got a good look at his face. It was a face I recognized, one I had seen countless times in the company newsletter and on the walls of the office. It was the face of the company president's brother. The next day, the news spread like wildfire through the factory. The president's brother, caught red-handed trying to steal sensitive documents from the office. It was a shocking revelation, one that sent ripples of fear and mistrust through the entire workforce. But as I stood there, watching the police car disappear into the night, I couldn't help but wonder, what drove him to do it? Was it greed? Desperation? Or something darker, lurking beneath the surface? One thing was for sure. Things would never be the same at the factory again. And as I locked up for the night and headed home, I couldn't shake the feeling that we hadn't heard the last of this dark and twisted tale. That's it for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe our channel. Click on one of the videos for other true horror stories.